Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. I've got my new friend Dan, and Dan's one of my subscribers. And I guess you'd say you're here on like what, a reconnaissance mission, checking out the Philippines and thinking about possibly making this your new home?
Well, yes, but it's not my new home, Mark. I lived here in Davao City many years ago for about 3 years. And then from my current home in Hong Kong, I have visited the Philippines several times in the last 21 years. So,
Well, why did you leave after 3 years?
The job changed, and we were there working in radio broadcasting in Davao. And I loved Davao a lot.
What were you doing in radio?
Broadcast engineer, but I also had a live show like on Saturday mornings down there.
No kidding.
Yep.
Yeah, I did radio too.
Yeah.
So you guys ran all the sliders and all
I
the
did that,
in the glass
also
booth.
working on transmitters and
nice.
studio to transmitter links and all kinds of things.
Wow. And so what was your profession when you're back in the States? You're originally from America, right?
Right.
And
Teaching?
Teaching. What were you teaching?
Different places, sometimes in churches, sometimes in schools, just depended on the particular job.
What subject were you teaching?
Well, for example, in Hong Kong, when I arrived in Hong Kong 21 years ago, I taught English and science.
Oh.
Yeah, so it varied a lot. And I taught psychology. My bachelor's degree is in psychology, which anybody who's done that degree knows you can do nothing with a BA in psych. You got to have a master's or PhD.
That's true.
So the only money I got out of it was working in a psychiatric hospital in Reno, Nevada. That's a whole nother story.
And so you said you worked in the airline industry for a while?
I worked for America West Airlines while I was in Reno working at the psychiatric hospital. Those are my two sources of income, per diem at the psych hospital and then working for America West, which provided the travel and the benefits. It had great medical benefits. So that was an interesting, challenging season of my life.
And you retired from that?
I didn't retire. I left and went on to other things, back to teaching.
Now, why Hong Kong? How'd you end up in Hong Kong?
I always wanted to come to Asia. This was after I had already lived in the Philippines and gone back to the States for a number of years, and then we felt we wanted to go to China and possibly teach. Almost did that, but then set it aside. I don't remember exactly why we did. There were several reasons, I think.
You say we. Were you married?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And then my wife got a job at an international school, and the school headmaster said, "Okay, Dan, we'll bring you all here on her job, and then we'll set you up with some things to do while you're here." Unfortunately, he was gone about 3 weeks after we arrived. So that all fell apart, and I ended up doing other things.
Yeah, a lot of guys I talk to have come, they're traveling around the world, digital nomads, and they're teaching online. If you've got a college degree, you can actually teach and make some pretty good money doing that, like especially the Chinese students. But like what I did with Cambly, you don't even need a college degree, because you're just basically having a conversation with people, and they want to practice having a conversation with native speakers. So it's a great way to make a little extra money, and I still do it.
Sure, you bet. It's great, and you build a relationship with your students, and it becomes very precious.
Yeah.
Very much the case. For the foreseeable future, unfortunately, I don't think China's going to be...
Well, I heard they shut down a lot of the schools over there.
They've closed it down, basically, the tutorial schools and all that kind of thing. Just without any notice, just poof, it's gone. Hong Kong may still be possible, Korea, of course, and Taiwan, possibly. Those may be in Asia are the three best places to try to teach English if you're coming to teach.
I had a lot of students in Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia, Egypt, all over the Middle East.
Exactly.
And also Brazil and Japan.
So I'm basically back in the Philippines because I learned to love this place when I was here before. And as I mentioned before, I kind of see myself as a refugee from Hong Kong, jokingly, because the COVID restrictions were so great, and the political situation was challenging in a lot of ways. When the Philippines opened up in February without a quarantine, I said, I'm off. So with a huge effort, it took a lot of effort for me to get out of there. That's almost a whole story in itself, but I made my way down to Manila and then spent a few days there in the middle of March, on up to Tagaytay, and stayed in a high-rise building there for a few days, and then finally to my Airbnb, kind of out in the countryside where I am now, which is a lovely spot.
Now, what kind of visa do you have in Hong Kong to stay there?
I'm a permanent resident in Hong Kong.
Oh, you are?
So, and it still is the case today. If you get a work visa to go to Hong Kong, after 7 years you can apply for permanent residence. And then you can stay there the rest of your life if you want, although the permanent residence isn't exactly permanent. because if you go away for 3 years and 1 day, you lose your PR. You still have right of abode and some other privileges, but you lose a lot of things. So most people will try to come back and renew. Like I met a guy during COVID who had been a reporter for one of the several of the major news organizations, AP and CNN. Not a reporter, sorry, a photographer.
Yeah.
He was spending 21 days in quarantine at the Regal Airport Hotel, so he could
21 days.
so he
Wow.
could renew his permanent residence in Hong Kong.
Wow.
He's back in the States. I said, "Why are you doing that?" He says, "Well, I spent a lot of years here, and I may want to come back."
Well, so if it wasn't for the restrictions because of COVID, and it wasn't for the increased restrictions for political views and things like that in Hong Kong, would you still stay there?
For now, because my business is there. I've developed a business helping clients get radios and Wi-Fi and LED lighting and other electronics made in China.
Okay.
So my business is still there, and I not only want to go back for the next year or two, but I really feel I need to go back because with one client, he has developed a new product that he's patented. It's in the healthy drink space. It's a device that you can make healthy drinks with, and he wants to finish that project. I help him find the factories, 2 of the 3 factories. And I'd like to see that product get off the ground if we can do it. But right now it looks very tough. You know, I haven't been able to go from Hong Kong into mainland China, 30 minutes away from where I live, for 2 years.
You used to go to China a lot?
Oh yeah, so I moved up to the north part of Hong Kong. I've made more than 500 trips to China, Mark.
Wow.
Most of those just up to Shenzhen and Dongguan, just north of Hong Kong.
You speak Chinese?
To my factories. I speak a little bit, Yidiandian. Just a little bit, and a little bit of Cantonese as well.
Is it free to, like, before the problems had with COVID, could you freely travel around China? I thought that you could go anywhere you wanted.
Yeah, except it got a little more difficult in the last several years. I want to say certainly maybe before 8 years ago or 9 years ago, 7 years ago, it was pretty free to travel around in China. In the last few years, we started seeing more restrictions where you arrive in some town, let's say a town of 50,000, you can't find a place to stay because they won't accept foreigners.
Really?
Yes, that's very common in China. In fact, one of the salespeople for one of my factories took me to his hometown. It was very special. We rode the high-speed train north and got to his hometown. It's a city of about several 100,000. And we stopped at the hotel where I was going to stay. He went in. Sorry, you can't stay. You have to go to this other hotel. And so that's become very common in China, and I assume it's going to continue for some time. There's less of an openness to foreigners in China than there was certainly 6, 7 years ago.
Because for a while there, I know like 10, 15 years ago, there were some Americans that had retired in China, went to China and liked it there because of the culture, the food, whatever, and actually were living there. A couple guys even had YouTube channels about it, but I guess that's all changed. They've just decided they don't like the new restrictions and the crackdown, and they're leaving in droves.
China is an absolutely spectacular place, full stop. The people are wonderful. And the things you can see and do are incredibly amazing. I think you could spend a lifetime traveling around there doing that. So the people of China and China itself are great. And that's what drew a lot of folks there. And things have changed, just to put it in a few words. It's changed, and there doesn't appear to be any chance of kind of going back to the way it was anytime soon.
Now, you had mentioned earlier that you had a friend of yours that worked for an airline, or retired from an airline, was able to get you a deal where you could travel basically almost for free. Was it anywhere in the world or just within?
Anywhere, yeah. This is for one of the major airlines.
No, we won't say who.
We won't say.
Yeah.
One of the major airlines in the U.S. And they all have similar, I think they all have or had.
Like a friends and family program?
Similar past programs, right? Yeah. And most of them, you could elect a family member or some friends to fly. I started that 19 years ago. In the beginning, as I shared, it was just a handwritten pass. But then it went electronic and then online, to the point where the last several years, I'm totally on my own. My sponsor didn't have to do anything. I just go online and look for flights, and I can see how many seats are available on each flight, try to choose the best flight with the best chance to get where I needed to go. And for me, living in Hong Kong, it was wonderful because Hong Kong
still do it?
Was a major destination. Hong Kong was a major destination, and so I'd fly often to the States from Hong Kong, and I could go to Singapore, but then they stopped that several years ago. I could go to Japan, but then they didn't fly from Hong Kong to Japan. Vietnam, I went once or twice on United. Sorry, I gave it away. Edit. But then they stopped that, and now, of course, they aren't even flying to most of Asia. United isn't.
But I mean, you still got the deal?
Well, I'm not sure, to be honest with you, because the website where I used to book, we call it listing. So when you're a standby passenger, employee, or a guest, you list for flights. You put your name on the list, and then it goes by seniority.
Oh.
So the people, fortunately, my sponsor had 36 years with the company. He was a 747 captain. And it helped me get bumped up a little bit. I was like fourth in the priority list, and then above me were like family of employees, and then spouses of employees, or something like that. And so that helped me travel. But to be honest with you, since COVID, Mark, I couldn't fly, for one thing. I couldn't leave Hong Kong without getting 21 days of quarantine, or 14, now it's 7. But I couldn't leave, so I haven't gone anywhere. And that website is gone, where I used to check in and list for flights. So I don't know. My sponsor is still alive, but he's fairly old. He's in his 80s. And I haven't heard from him either. So when I go to the US next month in May, I'm going to stop by and see him and see how he's doing. I'm concerned about him. Yeah.
Now, he saved you a lot of money.
Oh, Mark. Well, it's not just saving the money. It's just that I wouldn't have been able to go.
No.
I wouldn't have been. I would maybe. 2/3 of my travel I wouldn't have been able to do without that privilege to the States. Both flying internally, domestic, and going to the U.S.
But did you just go to the airport? You had to wait, like you're on standby, and
You're on standby, and you're just hoping and praying you get a seat. You can watch even to the last minute to see how the passengers check in and see how many seats are available. And then you're always, all of us on standby are hoping we might get a seat in business if there's one open. But well, I already gave the giveaway. United upgraded their business class in recent years, and it was very difficult once they did that. They called it. I forgot the name of their business class. And I hardly got up there because the old business class, not many people were happy about. The new business class was full almost all the time.
And so...
Polaris.
Polaris. Okay.
United Polaris, that's it.
So you came here from Hong Kong. Did you have any difficulty getting into the Philippines? Because I've heard different stories. Some guys said it was easy, no problem. Other guys said they had issues with the One Health Pass or the COVID test or whatever. How did it go for you?
Well, thanks to you and others who provide information, Mark, about the situation here in the Philippines, I was essentially prepared. And I knew everything I needed to do. I get to the airport, however. I had two issues. One was I was flying on Cebu Pacific, and I paid for 2 bags, to check 2 bags, but they limit it to 40 kg.
Right.
And because I don't know when I can go back to Hong Kong, I loaded up 2 50-pound bags, and and I was overweight for Cebu Pacific. So I got to the airport and I had to rearrange everything, and I threw some things out, and I stuffed my winter jacket for the US, I stuffed with the heaviest things I had. And I get to the counter, it was towards this is a little tip for travelers. If you're on the edge of some things, try to get there at the last minute with the long queue, because they're so busy, the people checking in, the employees, they'll often let things go. I can't guarantee it, but in my case, one bag was 24 kg, one was 21. Just let it go. They didn't charge me for being overweight. But the only issue I had was I get to the counter also, and I realized, I forgot to do the One Health Pass. And I knew I needed to do it. I just was so busy leaving, because I'm leaving for months, Hong Kong. It was one thing I didn't do. I said, look, I'll do it on my phone out at the gate. And the gal let me through. She was very sweet. Let me through. I went out to the gate. The airplane's late, fortunately. So that gave me more time. And then I thought I entered it, got it in, but I wasn't sure. And then I tried to do it again. It said, have you already registered the One Health Pass procedure? I thought, well, it must have it. And I couldn't find the QR code. So finally, at the end, I looked, and it was emailed to me. So the QR code was available in my email, but I hadn't checked. So there's a little tip.
What information do they ask for, by the way, on that?
Everything.
Everything.
They want you to scan copies of your COVID-19 immunizations. They want a scanned copy of your vaccinations, your PCR test before you leave, and
Well, scan it. Can you just take a picture of your phone? Or
You can take a picture with your phone. Obviously, if you can scan it, it's better because you can see the detail better. But when I got to Manila, finally, unfortunately, must have been a huge flight from somewhere in the Middle East, and there were large groups of people in front of us. And so they had guys from the Coast Guard kind of marshaling people, stopping everybody, and then slowly would let the group go, and then stop and go. And so it took a little longer than maybe a lot of people have experienced getting through this QR code thing. So they check you go up to a desk and they check your QR code, but then they want to see the paperwork too.
Yeah, so what's the point? It's just double.
It's in a computer somewhere, so I think that's it. It's like double checking. So
But you put it in the computer. So
a tip to everybody, make sure you have everything you need printed out. Don't rely on that device.
Well, if you didn't have it on the device or something went wrong with your phone or whatever, would they accept the paper copies?
They would.
Oh, they will?
Yeah, he just scanned my code and then he said, okay, show me this, show me that. Show me your PCR test, show me, your vaccination.
So if you had forgotten or couldn't get it to work, like a lot of guys have told me they couldn't get it to work, they will take the paper copies.
They'll take the paper copies.
That's good to know.
Yes.
And that's the first I've heard that.
Yeah, because I mean, you can drop your phone and you're in trouble, or your battery's gone or whatever. Print everything. That's the best advice I could give.
Yeah.
And then, but the other thing is, Cebu Pacific, I don't think I fell asleep. This is a less than 2-hour flight. Didn't provide us with, or I didn't receive an arrival card. So I go through all this stuff with the paperwork, and then it's time to do the actual immigration.
Yeah.
And I walk up to the immigration line. There's nobody waiting at one spot. The lady says, "Where's your arrival card?" I'm like, "Got to go over there." And then there's no pens. And I'm a traveler. I've traveled all over the world. So busy planning this trip, I forgot to bring a pen. All I had was a pencil. So then there's only one pen available. The rest are gone. And I had to wait for this lady to fill out like 5 people's cards. So here I am, it's late, it's like after midnight, and I thought, oh man, for lack of a pen. So don't forget your pen too.
You ever notice in the Philippines the paper's really thin? If you press
it
too hard, it rips right through it.
And that was my problem too.
It's like trying to write on toilet paper.
So make sure you get an arrival card when you get off that plane. Ask the people on the flight. I don't know if they didn't have any, or if I just didn't get one. I still don't know the story on that.
Going back to your luggage on Cebu Pacific, what happened to me when I flew in from, of course, America to South Korea, Incheon, and of course, in an international flight, you're allowed so much weight. And of course, on Cebu Pacific, it's less weight. And I got there, I had the same issue. My bags were all overweight. And a boy that worked for Cebu Pacific came out and said, "Oh, sir, you can send them freight, and he'll save you a lot of money." I said, "Oh, yeah, let's do that." Well, he said, "Well, I was there plenty early. I had almost 2 hours before the flight."
This is at Incheon?
No, this is at Cebu.
In Cebu?
From Cebu to here.
Yeah.
To Dumaguete. And so he helps me drag my suitcases. I had all this shit. Drag my suitcases like 3 blocks from the airport to some warehouse where they do that, and filled out some forms.
Did you ever see him again?
Yeah. He stayed with me the whole time. And he had a shirt on and everything. Took me, it was Cebu's shirt. Took me over there and we filled out all these forms. He had to search the luggage and they wrapped plastic all around him, but it saved me like 90% of what it was going to cost.
That's a great tip.
He wouldn't take any money either. It was just like, nice guy at the airline said, "I'm going to save this foreigner some money, for."
That's a great tip.
Yeah, so it was good.
The Filipino people are wonderful.
Yeah.
If you visit here, or certainly if you stay here a while, you find out just how wonderful they are in so many ways.
I agree. I've had so many times since I've been here where someone, a total stranger, has helped me for whatever reason. My motorcycle broke down, helped me find a mechanic. They're just good people.
They are.
So, if you move to the Philippines, any idea when that would be? Like what month?
Well, as I shared earlier, I've kind of got 2 strategies here. I might come back and stay until Hong Kong finally gets rid of the quarantine.
When would that be?
Only heaven knows. I don't think anybody else in the world knows, Mark. We don't know.
Well, from here you're going back to Hong Kong?
I'm going to the U.S. in May.
You're going to the U.S.? Okay.
I'm going to spend several weeks in the U.S. in May.
Okay.
And then I bought a round-trip ticket from Manila to San Francisco. So I'll be on the East Coast in Texas and the West Coast. And then I fly back from San Francisco, Tokyo, Haneda to Manila.
Okay, and then...
At that time,
That's
If
when
Hong Kong's open, I'll probably spend a few days in the Philippines and then head back home to Hong Kong. If it's still not open, then maybe come down here to Dumaguete area or back up to Tagaytay or maybe somewhere a third place. Hard to say. This is the Indiana Jones trip. You know, I'm making it up as I go. It's also one of the most complex and expensive trips I've ever done, in part because I don't have that standby privilege on United anymore.
Yeah, and so it's gotten so difficult to travel. You know, if you've traveled your whole life, like, you know, I have, you showed up at the airport with your passport. And I remember when I first started working on ships, they never even weighed your luggage. I used to put like 200 pounds of stuff in my, I used to call it my monster bag, the biggest suitcase I could find, full of stuff. They never checked anything, you know, never weighed it, nothing. And now, you know, you're a couple pounds overweight, they charge you. My friend here, he paid $500 in excess baggage to come here, you know, just to charge for this, charge for that. And
you do have to be careful. When I flew down to Dumaguete from Manila yesterday, some guy had this, it was a foreigner, had this huge backpack that looked like a military backpack, only it was like a third-party look-alike military bag. It was huge. It was literally this wide. And I was going to walk over to him and say, you're not going to fit that in the overhead luggage compartment on this Dash 8 propeller airplane. I'm sorry, it is not going to happen. But I'd let it go. Sure enough, he gets on there. And his wife had a fairly large piece of luggage, and he's got this huge backpack. So the flight attendant set it aside when everybody had boarded. He helped the guy shove this huge backpack under his seat. And then the poor fellow, who's tall, he's probably 6 foot tall, sitting there for the hour and 45-minute flight, whatever, with his legs scrunched.
So at least you didn't have to pay.
Yeah, but just check it. Just check it. It's my advice. Especially on the Dash 8, you've got very little.
But a lot of times they'll give you the option of your carry-on, would you like to check that for free?
Right.
You know, I used to do that a lot too if I didn't need what was in there.
I was surprised because the airline didn't catch that. None of the employees at the gate saw this bag and said, sir, I'm sorry, we'll check that for you. That's normally how it should be done, but it didn't happen yesterday. But we made it. I'm here.
Yeah, you're
sitting
here
in your living room, enjoying the beautiful sea out that way. Fantastic.
And so you've been here for how long again? In the Philippines?
This trip?
Yeah.
I arrived here March 14th.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'll be here about 6 weeks total. And I survived up in Tagaytay without a car. Transportation is very challenging up there if anybody goes up there. It's basically north and south transportation. If you try to go any other direction from Manila to Tagaytay, it's fine, but east-west, very challenging. So after navigating that for 5 weeks, I decided, okay, when I go to Manila, when I leave Dumaguete, I'm renting a car for 6 days and just having a blast, driving around every place that I couldn't get to without great trouble. Like different areas of Cavite, and there's a beautiful diving area and beach, Anilao, west of Batangas. I want to go visit there. In fact, I'll stay 2 nights in Anilao on next week on the beach.
So if you move here, you're the kind of guy to buy a car, you would have a motorcycle?
Probably have a motorbike.
Yeah, me too,
Yeah. I probably wouldn't need a car, don't want a car. But I haven't had a car in Hong Kong for 21 years, Mark.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I haven't had an electric dryer for 21 years.
Yeah, we don't have one either. We don't even think about it.
Yeah, I haven't. So
dryer used to ruin a lot of my clothes. It would shrink them and things like that, you know. And here, you know, we don't have hot water in the washer either. It's all cold water.
Yeah, same.
And I find my clothes don't get damaged. The colors stay longer and they get perfectly clean. And I like the way they smell when they hang out by the ocean.
Yeah, absolutely. The breeze right now. I wish the folks watching could see it and feel it, right? It's just so wonderful.
Well, you know, I sure appreciate your time, and I hope I get to spend more time with you, and especially when you come back, and I hope you make the decision to stay in the Philippines.
Thank you very much,
We
Mark.
need more people like you.
Privileged to meet you and to be here. And may I say one more thing?
Sure.
Something I've never heard anyone say on any of these YouTube videos about the Philippines, but it applies to living anywhere, from my experience in living in Hong Kong, living in the Philippines before. And that is, when I moved to Davao City, I determined before I came that at least 90% of my friends were going to be locals. And obviously everybody makes choices. You have to decide who your friends are going to be. But I decided I'm in the Philippines, I want to get to know the people. And I want to be friends and have deep relationships with the local people. Now, of course, you can still have deep relationships like you do, Mark, with some of the foreigners here, the people living from other places. all over the world and in the Philippines. But I just want to encourage folks to think about wherever you move to. Doesn't matter, Philippines, Thailand, wherever it is. Especially as a Westerner coming maybe to an Asian country or an African country, whatever it is, get to know the local people. Your life will be so much richer.
I agree. That's a really good tip.
Yeah, and you will be thankful years later, maybe if you're still living there and you have to go back to your home country or you end your days there, you'll be so thankful you got to know the local people.
And they're such friendly people. Like, we get invited to parties all the time. We were just over at a fiesta party the other night, and there was probably 30 people there. A lot of them I'd never met before, and you're constantly meeting new people, and they're very friendly and helpful, and they want to be friends with you. They find you interesting because you're from someplace else, and I agree. That's a great idea.
And I love the sense of humor that the Filipinos have. One quick story. So near Tagaytay, where I'm staying, it's a little town of Mendez, in an Airbnb there. I like it. It's very convenient. There's a little shop where I go buy things. Lady named Beth there. She's middle-aged. One day I saw the pile of eggs, stack of eggs there. I said, I wanted to know where they're produced. I'm curious where they're produced. They're not imported from Thailand, I doubt it. I buy Thai eggs in Hong Kong. And so I asked her, I said, Beth, where do those eggs come from? She looks at me, she says, chicken. Filipino humor.
Yeah. All right, well, thanks a lot for your time, and hope we have you back on sometime soon.
Thank you so much, Mark.
My pleasure.